So in 1966, the Trans-Am Racing Series is born. It's an instant hit. The SCCA sanctioned series is North America's most prominent racing series. Everyone loves the series because the cars that are competing are the cars that you can go into the showroom, buy, and drive out moments later. In the 1969 season, Penske and Donahue dominate in a very similar looking livery, 69 Camaro with the Sunoco on the side. Everyone starts to really pay attention. They got huge publicity and Camaros sold like hotcakes. That's the lead up for the most famous season of all, the 1970 Trans-Am season. Everyone gets involved, full factory efforts, huge amounts of money being spent. Ford, AMC, Plymouth, Pontiac, Chevy, Dodge, everyone's there spending huge money with the top drivers in North America. Along with all the manufacturers, all the heavyweights in North American racing got involved. You've got Penske and Mark Donohue, Bud Moore and Parnelli Jones, Chaparral and Jim Hall, AAR and Dan Gurney, Aerodynamics and Sam Posey. With the Trans-Am series getting all-time attention in the 1970 season, more and more drivers and team owners want in on the action. With the 71 season approaching, they've added another Canadian stop. They've got Tremblant, Saint-Jovite, Quebec, and now they add the Edmonton Grand Prix. Guy by the name of Don Duncan wants in on the action. He goes to Nurse Chevrolet in Toronto, right downtown, and trades in his '68 Corvette for the Z28. He takes it to John Todds, TODCO, a race team. He says, build this car into a Trans-Am car, make it SCCA legal, let's go racing. While this car is being prepped, a Canadian race car driver named Dick Brown is desperately looking for a ride. He wants in on the action. He approaches Bud Moore. They want 75 grand to run the number 2 Mustang on their team. Long story short, he ends up 25 grand short. He struggles with getting Canadian companies to buy in to what's a predominantly American race series. The guy prepping the car, John Todds, knows about Dick Brown. He gives him a call, says, hey, I've got an opportunity. Do you want to run with this Canadian team in the 1971 season? The 71 season, frankly, was a tough go for these guys. They had a whole whack of DNFs, a bunch of mechanicals, and a lot of growing pains. But they kept working all winter, knocking on doors, finding more sponsorship, and they were ready to go for the 72 season with a whole new look for the car. They got Sunoco Canada on board, running under the Sunoco banner. They got Duncan Chevrolet and Gagnon Springs. They were ready to go compete on a more serious note. They had learned a whole bunch in the 71 season, and they were a lot more prepared for 1972. So the 72 season rolls around, and they figure they've got enough money in sponsorship to do 4 races legitimately, competitively. They finished 5th at Road America and 6th at the Glen. This is a huge accomplishment for these guys, considering the huge money and factory efforts they were running against. Outside of the Trans-Am series, they figure they're going to hit one of the biggest races in Canada at the time, and still today. The Grand Prix of Trois Rivieres, the Molson Grand Prix, the Mayor's Cup. They go out and they win that race. The car continues on to race a little bit through the 70s, but as most people know, 72 is really considered the end of that golden era of Trans-Am, where the cars were legitimate stock cars, ones that looked the same as the cars that were sitting in the showroom. But really not long after, in 1990, the Trans-Am Historics become a reality. They go to Sonoma in California. You've got to have one of these legitimate Trans-Am cars that raced in period if you want to go there. This series continues to grow, and today, they even run as some support races in the NASCAR Cup Series. The guys at Historic Trans-Am, HTA, do an incredible job vetting these cars to make sure the cars that are running in the races are legitimately the cars that ran in period. You've got to run everything exactly according to the rule book from 66 to 72. And the Historic Trans-Am series is a major factor in what keeps the value of these cars so high today. Because of how big the Trans-Am series was and the current racing that goes on with all these cars, you know, take your pick of a championship winning car, a Donahue car. Cars like that are $1 million to $1.5 million today. Now these more privateer cars are a more accessible way to get the invite to the Historic Trans-Am series. Let me show you guys under the hood here. You get a glimpse into just how stock these cars had to be to meet the rules. You open it up, you see original bodywork, original fenders, exactly how they would have came from the factory. You've got your 305, your small block, transmission's an M21 Muncie, 4-speed transmission. But really they couldn't go crazy using all the technology of the time to make this thing into a full-blown race car. The spirit of the series was that these were stock cars. For a Trans Am with race history, the amount of documentation and stuff doesn't really disappoint. This guy's got a box full of it. So for a brass tag car, I don't know how much documentation they need, but the Trans Am historics, they've got to prove that the car legitimately is the car that you say it is, and it has race history in period. So here's the entire book. Where he goes through the entire history of the car. That's its first paint job, first livery. And he's got all the newspaper clippings, all the documentation you could want for these seasons. And this is cool. This is the SCCA logbook. This is probably the coolest piece in here. So Chevrolet Camaro, ASR sedan, blue, white, and red. Wow. Wheelbase, front track, rear track, the head restraint system, laughable by today's standards. So this is the 72 season, so Lime Rock was the first race. They needed to make some changes for safety. Watkins Glen, the second race. Elkhart Lake, the third race. And Saint Air, Quebec, the fourth race. This is neat, I was looking at this earlier today. Look at all these driver's notes from back in the day. Pretty detailed notes. I certainly don't keep notes quite as good as this. Pretty tall door bar here. The stock doors on a race car seem ridiculous. They weigh a ton. Put the wheel on. So we'll turn the fuel pump on, neutral. I knew it was gonna sound like a race car, but it sounds like a race car. Beautiful power steering. What a cool car. That was more fun than I expected. Way more fun. I can't get over how good these cars sound. How good this car sounds. After spending the day with this car, you know, I've gained more and more appreciation for why guys spend so much money on these cars. You know, they get to go and race them as they were in period. And a lot of the guys now, they were kids when they watched these cars run in 69, in 70, in 71. And now they get to go and buy these cars, run them at the same tracks that they ran back in the day, and run them exactly how they were in period. So now we've got to ask ourselves, do you need a car like this? No. No one needs a 1970 Camaro Z28 Trans-Am race car. No one really needs a race car. But man, if you're into road racing at all, whether you watch these races live growing up, or like me and were born 20 years after the fact, you definitely want a car like this.